The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
Let's listen as Maureen Lapointe, coach, therapist, educator, speaker, and founder of Head Heart Synergy, brings together another enlightened guest to inspire and motivate us to move forward, achieve our dreams and desires, so that we experience midlife awakening.
And I'm your host, Maureen Lapointe. Today we'll enjoy another candid conversation that reveals how to bring back a sense of balance and how to find forward focus. Today, take just a few moments to join us as we explore the possibilities and the perspectives that provide us with greater inner peace, power, passion, and purpose. Because that's what I call living at the edge of fulfillment in a midlife awakening.
Well, hello and welcome to our audience around the world. You know, the other day I was sitting, sipping a coffee and preparing for today's show. And one of the things that I did is I surfed on Google and looked up the term loss, because today's show is all about navigating through loss. And curiously, what came up was a whole lot of stuff about losing weight. Now, you know, I'm not saying that losing weight isn't important, but don't you find that interesting that you know, we are so uncomfortable about dealing with the emotions around loss, sadness, grief, that we don't really talk about it much. And, you know, this discomfort with facing tough conversations mean that many of our family, friends, and colleagues are actually suffering in silence out there, you know, and Dr. Gabor Mate says the root of all addiction is pain, and people turn to methods for numbing their pain and distracting from their pain. You know, they turn to things like drinking, alcohol and other things, doing drugs, whether it's recreational or otherwise, filling their places with shopping on Amazon or, you know, other places, or some even, you know, order from Uber Eats on a regular basis just to get by. And as a coach therapist, I also know that they often hide or they stay frantically busy. You know, like those people who work out at the gym until it closes on a daily basis. You know, it seems we'll do almost anything to escape an ache of loss or the gaping hole that's left when something we love has gone away. So I was reminded of a quote that said, "I'm not sure which pain is worse, the shock of what happened or an ache for what will never happen." And if that put a little bit of a lump in your throat too, share that with me. Add a simple yes in the comments, wherever you're watching from, because grief and loss require some work to navigate. They influence your whole life. And, you know, and if you're not willing to put in the work and feel those feelings, they will follow you throughout the years. And there was another really pertinent quote that was, "Some things cannot be fixed. They can only be carried." And I personally have found my grief to be a little like this. You know, at the time, it felt like I wanted to fix it, but it could only be carried. And that was when it was fresh. You know, when I was fresh into a loss, I couldn't see that grief never ends, but it does change. You know, there's a passage to navigate. It's not a part just to stay in. It's an invitation to grow. And because it's wrapped in an unfamiliar pain, many don't know how to handle it or what to say to others who are suffering, you know. And so I'm not surprised that there's not a lot on Google However, the one thing we know for sure is that resisting any of these pains or emotions ensure us that they will remain. Good morning, Sherry. And by the way, those of us I haven't met before, I'm Maureen Lapointe, and my life has held its share of losses as well. So what I found is that many of my clients, what they've actually lost is their self-trust. When compassionate, service-minded women reach the age of about 40, they begin to notice that they've given themselves away. They've given so much to so many for so long. And that's a loss of self-trust, and it forms the root of difficult relationships, and it's a sense of emptiness, loss, and being purposelessness, because that sense that something's missing. And many wake up one day wondering, what is missing? When might it be my turn? Believing that they have to find a way to dial down those inner toxic saboteurs, we call them, that inner toxic self-talk, so that you can end the ache of loss, fill the void, and heal the feelings of being lost. And many women, what they really want is to eliminate that sense of self-sacrifice, that plaguing sense of self-doubt and of self-sabotage. They want to explore the ways to dial down the toxic inner voices and remind them of who they are and all of their passions and feeling purposeful through that wise inner voice, so that they can speak the truth and they can have greater impact in the world. And in this show, we are speaking with a guest who helps others see the way to navigate through all this loss. So the show is called Navigate Through Loss. And today, let's embrace possibilities. And one of the possibilities is giving yourself the gift of time to think and feel a little about how you think and feel. So I'm going to post a link to a quiz at the end so that you can tell what the number one focus is that would improve your life satisfaction score. And today you're also invited to participate in this show. Anytime something speaks to your heart, like you can simply comment or like or share your thoughts or questions. And so that we can reach out and share that with you, because here on the Edge of Fulfillment today, you have an opportunity for my company, Head Heart Synergy, to make life better for someone else in the world simply by commenting, liking, and sharing, so that you can help me to help someone else who needs access to clean, clear water for a day, wherever it's needed most. And this means whenever you comment or ask a question or listen to the podcast when it's on replay, you help someone else in the world to live better. And I want to thank you for that. And now each week, we broadcast in all kinds of different places through different kinds of social media on different platforms. And your thoughts, feelings, and questions are really important to us. And our wonderful producer, Roxy, works hard behind the scenes, helping us to see your questions and shape this show into something that's really beneficial to you. So I want to say thank you to Roxy. And if you're listening, go ahead and pop a little comment and put a hashtag thanks Roxy or a hashtag question and then ask a question. And help us hand out those days of fresh water and impact somebody else in the world. So right now, you can do that and you can support us by helping us watch those days of fresh water increase. So each week on Edge of Fulfillment, we show up in the Head Heart Synergy Facebook fan page, or we show up on w4wn.com or talkfortv.com, and we run a contest for amazing different prizes. So today's guest is supporting you with the opportunity to win a personal, private 30-minute session with her. And all you need to do to be entered into the contest is simply listen for the 5 special words that we will tell you about within the show. So you've already heard the first word. The first word is the word support. So write that word down, because at the end of the show, we'll ask you to put all 5 words in the chat. So don't put them in there yet, but go ahead and jot that one down, support. And we're going to take a short little break. So go ahead during the break, jot down that special word, and remember to invite friends and family who can benefit from exploring and empowering themselves, because this show is all about navigating through loss. And invite them to join us at the Edge of Fulfillment on the Head Heart Synergy Facebook fan page, or W4WN, that's the Women for Women Network Radio, or on Talk for TV. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Did you know video is the future on content? There are 3 good reasons why video is the future of content. Number 1, videos are often more engaging than simple pictures or music alone. Number 2, it's much easier to tell your story through video. Number 3, because we love to watch video, they go viral much faster. Hey, notice you're still watching right now. See how well it works. Next time we can play your video here instead. Ask me how. Shine online on Talk 4 TV and W4WN Radio.
Hey, are you looking for a brighter future? Wishing for greater calm, clarity, and confidence? What if you knew an inside job was the answer? Your mission: stop the inner burn, gain mental fitness so you get more out of life. Imagine in about 15 minutes a day for just 6 weeks. Come on, we'll show you how. Don't miss it. Just go to www.lorraine.gives/mfitness and join us right now.
So welcome back. Let's recap our contest this week. Our guest is providing an opportunity for a 30-minute session with her, all about navigating through loss. And you've already heard the first of 5 words that you'll need to put in the comments at the end. And the first word was the word support. And now all you need to do is listen for the other words as we continue here on the Edge of Fulfillment on W4WN, the Women for Women Network Radio, and Talk for TV. And I'm thrilled to welcome our guest, because Maureen Desmond knows that many of us haven't been given, adequate tools necessary to how to handle our own grief. And through her experiences, she understands that it can be lonely and isolating and confusing. And it's so much more than just, that 3 days off for bereavement leave, because grief and loss are an unfamiliar reality. And she knows that grief is a journey, and although it doesn't feel like it at the time, you can find joy again. So I'm not going to introduce her anymore. I'm going to introduce the real Maureen Desmond. So come on out, Maureen. It's so good to have you here.
Hi, Lorraine, and hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here today to talk about loss and grief. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. And it's interesting because usually the show is so uplifting and joyful, and this is a heavy topic. But from our conversations, I know that from your personal experience, you truly understand the taboos that exist around this topic. So I'd love to know, where would you like to start your story?
Yes. Well, first of all, it's so ironic, and it didn't even hit me until this week, that we are on the cusp of my first big loss in my life. Happened on August 30th, 37 years ago. So we're coming up on that date. And it's a date that's what happens. It's sort of like you start coming up on it, and it brings back feelings. It brings back, sounds of this time of the year, smells of this time of the year. It brings that time back. And again, 37 years later. Mm. Now, this was when my sister passed away. And she was young, 18 years old, and died suddenly in a car accident. And I was at school, and I was a 20-year-old rising into my junior year. And I got that phone call, and which just devastated me and the rest of my family. I have other siblings, and then my mom and dad, and it just rocked our world. And at that time, there really wasn't a lot of support. Even through therapy, there weren't really specific people that were supporting the grieving or the grieving process so much. And so we really had to wing it. And I come from a place where I was always sort of a caretaker role, a peacekeeper person. And so what I ended up doing is taking on the role of taking care of everybody else. So, okay, I'm going to go.
Like I was just going to say, like so many of my clients and the women that I serve, they accept that role that's given to them.
Yes, yes. And it's very normal. And it's also a sort of a process or a way that we avoid our own pain is we start reaching out to others to support them and be strong for everyone else. And, that's one of the myths of grief and loss is, sometimes people will say, oh, just take care of everybody else, stay busy, don't think about it, go back to work, dive into this, dive into that. And yeah, we can do that. And many people do. But what's important is that we do take the time to grieve those that we love. And, whether it's a family member or a friend or a coworker, there's all different layers. Or a pet.
Or a pet.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any loss. I mean, sometimes I think we discount the importance of loss in our lives.
Yeah. Absolutely we do.
And from what you were just saying, I mean, it's the suppression of our own grief or loss, our own feelings by helping others. And we think we might have dodged a bullet. Oh, I got through that by helping everybody. I was however you describe, I was so nice. Many of my clients describe themselves as being too nice, and what shows up, I believe, is if you suppress those emotions long enough, they show up later as illness in the body. So, many men suffer heart attacks because they don't deal with the emotion of loss or disconnection in the heart area. And women, it can be, Chinese medicine has all kinds of information about the effects on organs of the body when you don't process and navigate through emotion like loss. So please go on. This is so important.
It is. And I want to layer into just an expression out to the masses, to our audience. We're in a time right now where we've gone through a pandemic, and so many people are experiencing a form of loss in their lives. And a lot of times people think of grief as the loss of a loved one, which absolutely it is. But grief is also any change in someone's normal and natural pattern of behaviors. So just think about how many things fall into that grief category. So loss is, as you were saying before I got on, talking about all the different types of loss, pet loss. It can be a move, a significant move. It can be a job loss. It can be retirement. Many people right now are experiencing empty nester syndrome, that their last child has gone off to college and now they're dealing with, oh my gosh, okay, why do I feel so sad when we're so excited that, our children are grown and they're healthy and they've gone on to school? There's so many different layers and levels. And so I just want to acknowledge that too, as I talk through my own grief, which is a lot about the loss of family members, but it does tap into a lot of other things. So back to kind of my story is, so my sister, died in this car accident. And Lorraine, you talked about the impact on everyone. So unfortunately, my father also died 8 years later to the day. He actually died on the same day as my sister died. And so our family had to go through this whole terrible experience again. And he dropped dead of a heart attack.
Another sudden loss.
Got that phone call, and it was like a train wreck again. Like we have to go through this again, and he was our father. He was our support system, through Kathleen's death. So now what? How are we going to do this? And so, that happened. And then later for me, 10 years later, I was diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer. And so who's not to say that that could have been triggered by some of this loss? So there's a lot of, we don't know all of that. We can make assumptions, and that's not even that important. It's just that these things do happen. And the reason I'm doing the grief coaching, and the reason I want to share my story and share this message and give some tools and resources and tips to those who are going through it, is that I know how important it is to have a support system. And I know how important it is that our society get more comfortable talking about and experiencing grief, whether you're the griever or whether you're someone who's supporting the griever, because just that alone can brighten someone's day. And take it from someone who's been through a lot of loss. If I'm walking down the hall at work and I'm feeling really horribly inside, and I see somebody approach me and they smile and nod like, I know what's going on with you, but I don't know what to say, but I'm just going to give you this smile and nod. That goes a long way. It really does. Versus someone that walks down the hall and is like, uh-oh, there's the girl that lost her sister. I don't want to look at her or say anything, and turn their heads away and don't acknowledge it. And it's all human. I'm not saying there's right or wrong to it, but it's just little things like that that will help those who are going through some type of pain.
Yeah. I want to acknowledge you in the work that you do. It is so important. And my own belief system is that we experience things in our lives, our challenges, so that we can be equipped to understand others and support them too. And I know that your story will touch lots of people out there. And it is so wonderful that you have found the inner strength to do what you do. And it is a smile. It is just a sense of being there for someone. Quite often I feel like people think that they need to do something, let me do something. Let me put a Band-Aid over this gaping wound. Instead of just allowing the person to be in it.
Yeah.
For as long as they need to be in it at a time, and not to say that they need to be stuck in it and wallow in it. And some people choose to live in it forever. But there is a sense. Well, you tell me, is there a time limit? Is there a pathway? It's called navigating. We're talking about navigating through loss.
Yeah.
So before we deep dive into that, I do want to let our listeners know that we have talked about two other words, special words for today. One is grief, and the other is loss. So now you've had the 3 words. So you've had support, grief, and loss. So do you mind if we take a little bit of a dive into the whole process of navigation through loss?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
So, everyone experiences grief in their own way. It's very unique. And a lot of people will talk about, those stages that you go through. And that's a little bit of a myth too.
Yeah, wasn't that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross or something?
Yes.
There's 5 stages, and you will do this, and then you will do that, and then you, which is all very nice to write a book about.
Yeah.
and not exactly aligned with real, well, I won't say real human beings, but we all do it. We all go through those processes, but differently.
Yes. And she did some incredible work around when she was writing about those stages. It was really talking about people that have gotten a terminal illness, have been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and then are in the dying process. And that is where those stages came from. And it sort of evolved over into grief. And so it's not those same stages, but there are definitely things that people go through. Obviously, when you first are in that moment and you get that news, you're sort of in a state of shock. You become numb and your energy levels drop. And it's just hard to kind of sort through things. And, as we go through the pain and the loss, whether we're the ones that dive into it and run right through the pain, or whether we're the types that stay behind and say, I can't take this on right now. I'm going to do it little pieces at a time. That's all part of the process. And that's why you can't really put a stage on it. And there's many times it's not a linear movement. You may have some movement forward and start feeling, okay, the veil of that heaviness is wearing a little bit, but it doesn't mean that you don't have those swings, those ebbs and flows of these emotions that kind of come and go on a regular basis. So it's all normal and natural. The grieving process is a part of life. And I never wanted to have to experience these things. I would never say to someone who's experiencing grief, don't worry, you're going to be joyful down the road. You're going to be happy again. You just don't say that, because in the moment you don't feel that way. And you have to go through some time and to kind of level set and get back on track. And so that's why, bringing up the whole support thing, whether you have to go back to work or you're going back to school or you're running your household, we all can't just go back to life as it was, as if nothing happened, because first of all, it just feels wrong. How can I just get on with my life after the funeral, knowing that my sister, was 18 years old and a part of my life for every waking moment. And so you battle with your own experiences, and it's painful. The pain is real. I know that when I was going through Kathleen's death, it was weeks and weeks before I even I was grieving. I was the one that dove right in, because I'm a feelings person, and I couldn't hold it in, really. Even though I was taking care of others, I was still grieving. And it was important for me at that time to find someone that I could talk to that wasn't part of my life, because I couldn't go to my family and weep, because they were. And my friends, we were in a timeline where everybody was in college, so nobody could really relate to me. Death was not really something that anyone wanted to deal with. And so I felt like I was on an island by myself at times. So I did seek therapy, and I I tried a few different therapists, and I found one that was just a really, really amazing. And that really helped me get through my experience. And again, everyone's different. But for me, I just needed a safe space where I could just go and sit on her in a chair and just let everything out. And there were many times that all I said was, hi. I'd sit down and I would sob for 50 minutes. And it was so relieving. And it felt so good. And I would apologize to her throughout. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And she'd say,
isn't that awful that we feel that we have to apologize?
Yes. So
similarly, from what you were saying, I have clients who feel guilty that they feel okay, that they have periods of feeling, like you said, it's hard to go back to normal. And it is.
Yeah.
But there are periods of time where the grief is not front and center. And when you realize that you are okay and even laughing and feeling joy, and then they say, oh my God, I feel so guilty about that.
Yes.
We shouldn't have to apologize for our feelings.
Yes.
Our feelings just are.
They just are. And we have to release, and we each know ourselves, what helps me may not help someone else, and the way I grieve. And that's why I said it's very different. It has to be your natural way, your natural tendency, and you know that best. And during that time, having her helped me express, and then and it also opened up this place in me that I felt like, and these are the gifts of grief. I started seeing things a little differently, and I started listening to things a little differently, and I started just feeling life a little differently. And so it was as if, the sun, when it was shining, it made me happier on a different level. Or walking by a field of sunflowers that, I lived around farmland growing up, and I saw them every day. But after having loss, seeing the sunflowers was like, I saw them in a different way. And this time I pulled off to the side of the road, and I got out of my car and I walked over to them, and I touched the petals, and I sobbed, and I felt on this completely different level than I ever had. And that is what ends up happening when we break open. When we break open with pain, there's so much light that comes in and takes over that pain and helps us get through. And so there's so much. I know that, Lorraine, you talk about living on the edge of fulfillment. Yeah. I would never wish pain and grief and loss on anyone, but I will say that there are gifts in it that you won't know until you experience it. And it's sort of like you're standing on the edge, and, nobody wants to jump into that cold water in the ocean when the waves are splashing and try to swim through. But sometimes you have to, and have a life preserver on, but sometimes you just have to jump in and kind of like navigate through all of that. And you'll see these moments of light. One other thing I want to say is back to my sister. So about 2 months before she died, a really good friend of mine that I worked for during summer jobs called me and told me about this gentleman that we had worked with that was had been diagnosed with cancer, and he was dying, and he didn't have very long to live. And this was somebody that we just loved. He was like a second dad to all of us. And knowing, when I got that call, and this is pre-experiencing loss, death of that type. And I wanted to go see him. I wanted to visit him. He had left, and he was at home, and he was going to be at home from that point on. And I actually asked for his address, and thought about going to visit. And then I kept stopping and saying, I don't want to, what am I supposed to say to somebody that's dying? I wasn't brave enough. I just couldn't go there. And I had this guilt and I felt so bad. And after my sister died, all of a sudden I had this awakening. I have to go see Jim. I have to go talk to him because my heart had been broken open. I had experienced things that I never really understood. And to me, I thought it will do both of us good if I go and just hold his hand, even if I don't know what to say. This part of me came out that I probably wouldn't have done if I hadn't experienced my own loss. So I called his wife and I asked her if it was okay. And I set up a time to go to their house. And I did. I went to visit Jim. And I don't really remember much now, but I do remember sitting next to him and holding his hand. And we had a lot of silence, but I just know that between the two of us, it helped us both, because for me, it helped me feel in a way I never had and give him some support. And he gave me kind of this, okay, like, gosh, I can't believe you're here. I can't believe you are visiting me. Why would anybody do this? You're 20 years old. You're supposed to be off in college having fun. And I could share my story with him. And so again, those are those living on the edge, those silver linings.
The word that comes to mind is another one of our special words, which is connection. Mm-hmm. It's through our experience and our emotions, joyful or painful, that we find connection with others. Yeah. If you never experience anything in your life, but everything goes along just hunky-dory and nothing ever happens to you, and you break a nail, it's a disaster. And so that there's always, my point is that you always get something in your life that will trigger emotion, that will give you an opportunity to experience something. Now, somebody breaking a nail who's lost their sister, I mean, who even notices such a thing?
Right.
So I think the experiences in life give us an opportunity. That's the gift.
Yeah.
It gives us an opportunity. I love the way you put that, Maureen, that it breaks our heart open. It breaks our heart open.
Yes.
So that we can connect with others. So there's our fourth word for the day, is connect.
Connect and connection. Yes, because we need that more than ever. And again, to all those out there listening who have had loss, are experiencing anything, again, whether it's a pet loss, a job loss, the loss of a loved one, it's, as much as you can, like, just let yourself feel it, give yourself permission, and find that support person, find that one person. It might be your best friend. It might be your cat. It might be
someone who is not connected in any way. And that's where I see our roles as coaches and therapists, not connected in any way to the event or the family there's a gift in that.
Yes.
Because there's no judgment. Mm-hmm. You can hold the space for someone to step into their grief, their loss, their joy without judgment.
Yes.
And, and I see that as our role, our natural role as human beings for each other. I know that that's my calling. My calling is to step in and be that for others. And I can see that that's yours too. And so thankfully there are some, what I call light workers. You said it makes it you help people find the light. You're a light worker.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, yeah.
And
And
it's
you're right about the human side. I mean, that's really what this is all about is humanity and humility. It humbles
mm,
you and it makes you see and hear and look at things differently, and a lot of times in an even better way. And so, the pandemic has brought us into that space where we're all in collective grief of some sort.
mhm.
And and so I think this gives our society an opportunity to acknowledge and get a little bit more comfortable. I'll say a little bit more comfortable with being open about it and talking about it, and helping those people that have had loss. And don't be afraid if you say something to them in support and they start crying. Sometimes we avoid talking to people because we don't want them to cry. It's okay. We actually kind of want to cry. We kind of want to let it out.
It's
And
like I'm not a crier, but I really appreciate when someone can touch me well
yeah.
enough, like emotionally, and I mean
Mhm.
emotionally, not physically, but
Yeah.
emotionally, where I'm given permission to
Mhm.
feel
Yeah.
the depth of my feelings.
Yeah.
Because if we suppress, if we repress and suppress our feelings, hide them away, they're not there, or shove them down and pile other things on top. I mean, that's where as I was saying at the top of the show, that's where addictions come from,
Yeah.
where we try and numb and dumb ourselves, we distract ourselves with all kinds of different things so
Mhm.
that we can avoid feeling what we fear will kill us.
Yes.
We fear that this pain will be unbearable and will kill us. When the truth of it is that it won't be pleasant, but it won't ever kill you
Yeah.
if you allow yourself to navigate through it.
Mhm.
I want to add to our listeners, because our time is ticking on, that we've heard the fifth word as well, which is natural. So perhaps we can talk a little bit about the naturalness of grief and loss, and a little more about what others can do if you know someone who's moving through grief or loss. And we're all moving through it at the moment, as you said. The world has changed. We are sharing in the collective differences
Mhm.
globally. And
Yes.
so at some level, this is an invitation to all of us to step up and open our heart, to break open our heart and feel the light.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So,
it really is, it's simple things that help. It's natural, simple things. And again, sometimes we do want to go into that role and start doing things, which is fine, but it can just be a look. It can just be a sometimes I say a box of tissue on the desks in an office, that kind of symbolizes, hey, we're here to talk about real things. So, there's sometimes people just don't even have the words and they might just pass a box of tissue over, and that just says a lot, I mean, with no words. So it's you know, I that I guess I would say, as I talk to people that are going through grief and I coach through that, and do small groups and things like that, um, everyone sort of does come to the the place where it's either you really do just kind of want to grieve and let all the emotions out and don't have a lot to say. And then I see these patterns where everyone starts kind of coming back to, hey, you know what? I had planned a trip 2 years ago and I canceled it after I had this loss or after I went through this. And I'm starting to think about it again. And so there's these little things that start happening to us again naturally when we start crossing over into, I want to continue to live. I want to continue to move on. And there's a real, we're honoring our loved ones. We're honoring our situation and ourselves when we can get to that point where we know that they would want us to move on and be happy. And so, I always talk about honoring them and honoring yourself. And that's a really important piece of moving forward. We never forget them. You will never forget your loved one. I don't care how young you are when it happens, how old you are when it happens. We will never forget them. They're fully embedded in our souls. And I can say that, I can vouch for that from my own experiences. So, we really do get from a place of that moment when it happens, and then kind of just picking up the pieces and the reaction time. And then we start getting some momentum. And we really do get to that place where we are finding joy again. And people come into our lives that maybe wouldn't have come into our lives if this had not happened. So there's this real spiral, nonlinear way that grief happens.
Yeah, I like to say it's a little bit messy. Mm-hmm. But if everything in life were neat and tidy and followed the same path, we'd be bored. And yes. So the mess is an invitation to see that there are possibilities and gifts and opportunities. And if you can't see those for yourself, then please reach out. Mm-hmm. And it hasn't avoided my notice that we've had no comments through this show.
Oh my goodness.
And as I said at the top of the show, when I Googled the word loss, the word grief, what comes up? Well, for loss, it's all about weight. It's curious to me that mm-hmm. Here we have a show and we're discussing the topic, and it is challenging. It is so challenging. Yeah. But I think for me, what I want our listeners to know is that you don't need to do this alone. You mentioned being an island. You felt like you were an island when you lost your sister, that there was nobody there for you. And I just want our listeners to know that you're not an island. You're surrounded by support and love if you are able to reach out and receive it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true.
Our perspective of being alone is what often compounds the hurt.
Yeah, that's a great point, Lorraine. You get it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Rachel. It's hard to comment when you're at the edge of emotion with this, but thank you. It's a great show. Thank you, Rachel.
And thank you.
Yeah. And it's that sense of being at the edge of emotion. It's a sense of like, oh my goodness, I could just if I say anything or do it, I'll fall in. Mm-hmm. And the sense of it's an abyss again, that when you allow yourself to open and feel it, that you'll die, that you'll fall into an abyss and you'll never get out of it. Mm-hmm. And that's the lie of it.
Yeah.
And it is. Yeah, let yourself feel it. Let yourself
feel it. It's very I can appreciate what Rachel just said. Thank you for sharing that. That is exactly right. It's we're all so afraid to tap into that pain, and it's also hard to talk about it with others sometimes.
And sometimes you don't need to talk.
Yeah.
You just need to say, I need support.
Yeah. And just the fact that you're doing this show today, Lorraine, thank you, because people hopefully will also say, oh, wow, all those things that they just talked about, I felt those things too, but I thought that that was abnormal, or I didn't think that was the normal way to heal or grieve, and so, they're hearing the reality, and that's really helpful too. So thank you for having me for this discussion today, because just something like that, making people feel like, okay, this is normal. I didn't think this was normal.
Well, and I want to thank you for being on the show today. And we have absolutely run out of time. And I knew that we could talk to each other for hours about this. But
Yeah.
I just want to run through our words once more for our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and pop in the chat for a session with Maureen Desmond. And the special words today were support, grief, loss, connection, and natural. So those 5 words. And I also said at the top of the show that we would link to the quiz, the #1 way that you can improve your life satisfaction score. So there's the link. Thank you so much, Roxy. I want to thank you for being on the show, Maureen. It's been a delight and a pleasure. And this is your host, Lorraine Lapointe, with Head Heart Synergy, reminding you that at the edge of fulfillment, there's always a choice. You can stay on the edge getting what you've already got, or you can become just a little courageous and move beyond the edge to get what you really want. And I want to thank you, Maureen, and see the rest of you next week. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.